Before you say a single word, people have already formed an impression of you. Not consciously, not analytically, but instinctively. Human beings scan for signals, posture, pace, eye behavior, micro-reactions, movement patterns. These cues register faster than speech. And in many environments, professional rooms, social gatherings, negotiations, the nonverbal layer carries more weight than whatever you eventually say. High value is rarely declared. It is detected. You can walk into a room silently and still command attention, or you can speak immediately and still feel overlooked. The difference is not vocabulary, it is regulation. Most people move quickly when they feel uncertain. They fidget, they oversmile, they scan the room nervously, they adjust clothing repeatedly, they rush to fill silence. These behaviors are subtle, but they communicate something: internal instability. Instability lowers perceived value, not because the person lacks worth, but because the signals suggest tension, and tension signals vulnerability in status-based environments. The Stoics understood something modern psychology now confirms: the body mirrors the mind. Internal state leaks outward. If your thoughts are scattered, your movements will be scattered. If your emotions spike easily, your face will betray it. If you feel the need for approval, your posture will subtly collapse toward others. You do not need to announce confidence. You signal it, and the most powerful signals are quiet. In this video, we're not talking about dominance tricks or exaggerated alpha theatrics. High-value presence is not about intimidation. It is about controlled energy. You regulate inside. The room reads it outside. There are 5 non-verbal rules that instantly shift how you are perceived. They require no speech, no self-promotion, and no aggression. Just disciplined awareness of your physical behavior. Because when your body moves with intention instead of impulse, people feel it. And when people feel stability, they respond to it. Let's break them down. Before we move into the specific rules, you need to understand the foundation. Non-verbal authority is not something you put on. It is something that emerges when your internal state is regulated. You cannot fake calm for long. You cannot imitate presence without eventually leaking tension. The body exposes what the mind is doing. The Stoics trained themselves to master perception before mastering performance. Marcus Aurelius did not focus on appearing powerful. He focused on controlling his reactions. Epictetus did not practice body language. He practiced internal discipline. The external composure followed naturally. This is the framework. Regulate inside, signal outside. When your thoughts are rushed, your movements become rushed. When you seek approval, your posture subtly leans forward. When you feel threatened, your gestures shrink or become overly animated. When you feel the need to impress, your facial expressions exaggerate. People may not consciously analyze these signals, but they respond to them. High-value individuals do not leak urgency. They do not telegraph anxiety. They do not overcorrect silence. They do not chase attention physically. Their nervous system appears stable, and stability reads as competence. In professional settings, especially emotional, regulation is interpreted as leadership potential. In social settings, it reads as self-assurance. In conflict situations, it reads as strength. The mistake most people make is trying to control the outside first. They adjust posture without calming their breath. They hold eye contact while their internal dialogue is frantic. They attempt stillness while mentally scrambling. It feels forced. Instead, you start with the nervous system. Slow your breathing. Reduce internal commentary. Anchor attention to the present moment. Release the need to be evaluated positively. When the internal pressure decreases, the body settles automatically. And when the body settles, something subtle happens in the room. People slow down around you. Presence is contagious. Your physical signal, the other raises it. The 5 rules we're about to break down are not performance hacks. They are external expressions of internal composure. Master the inside. The outside will speak for you. Rule number 1. Slow your physical movements. Speed communicates urgency. Urgency often communicates anxiety, and anxiety lowers perceived status. Watch how most people move when they enter a room where they feel evaluated. Their steps are quick, their head turns rapidly, their hands adjust clothing repeatedly. They sit down fast, they speak fast, they react fast. Fast movements suggest internal pressure. High-value presence moves differently, not exaggeratedly slow, not theatrical, just unhurried. When you walk, reduce your pace slightly, not to the point of awkwardness, but enough that your steps feel intentional rather than reactive. When you sit down, do it without rushing. When you reach for a glass, do it smoothly. When you turn your head to listen, let the motion complete fully instead of snapping quickly. This subtle reduction in speed changes how you are perceived. Slowness signals control. It suggests that you are not threatened by the environment. It communicates that you are not scrambling to keep up. It implies confidence without saying a word. The Stoics valued deliberate action over impulsive reaction. Marcus Aurelius wrote about responding according to reason, not emotion. Physical pacing mirrors that philosophy. When you slow your movements, you interrupt impulsive energy. There is also a neurological component. Slower movement often regulates breathing. Regulated breathing stabilizes heart rate. Stable heart rate lowers visible tension. Your face softens. Your gestures become grounded. People sense this. In meetings, the person who moves calmly appears more centered than the person who fidgets. In social environments, the individual who turns deliberately and listens fully appears more confident than the one scanning constantly. Speed is often an unconscious attempt to prove value. Slowness suggests you already believe you have it. Practice this intentionally. The next time you enter a room, reduce your movement speed by 10%. Notice how it feels. Notice how others respond. You are not trying to look important. You are removing unnecessary urgency. And when urgency disappears, authority quietly increases. Rule number 2, hold eye contact 1 second longer. Eye behavior is one of the strongest non-verbal status signals in any interaction. Too little eye contact communicates insecurity or avoidance. Too much, especially unbroken staring, can feel aggressive or performative. High-value presence sits in the middle, steady, relaxed, unforced. Most people break eye contact too quickly, especially when they feel evaluated, challenged, or slightly intimidated. Their gaze drops. It flicks sideways. It scans the room mid-conversation. These micro-breaks signal discomfort. You do not need to stare. You simply need to delay the break. When someone finishes speaking, hold eye contact for 1 additional second before responding. When you finish speaking, allow your gaze to remain steady rather than darting away immediately. When someone challenges you, keep your eyes stable instead of looking down. That extra second communicates something subtle but powerful. You are not rattled. The Stoic principle underneath this is composure under observation. If you are constantly managing how you appear, your eyes will betray it. But if you are anchored internally, your gaze remains calm. Eye contact also regulates power dynamics. The person who looks away first in moments of mild tension often unconsciously signals deference. Extending your gaze slightly shifts that dynamic without aggression. There is another layer. When you maintain relaxed eye contact, you force the other person to sit with their own words. If they exaggerated, they feel it. If they challenged you, they sense your steadiness. If they attempted to dominate, they feel less traction. The key word is relaxed. Your face should remain neutral, your jaw unclenched, your brow soft. This is not confrontation, it is stability. In professional settings, steady eye contact signals credibility. In social settings, it signals self-assurance. In conflict, it signals that you are not easily shaken. Practice this gradually. Start by becoming aware of when you break eye contact out of discomfort. Then extend it slightly. Not dramatically, just enough to communicate, I am here, I am steady, I am not intimidated, and that steadiness quietly raises your perceived value without a single word spoken. Rule number 3, control your facial reactions. Your face is often the first place your nervous system leaks. A raised eyebrow, A forced smile, a quick smirk, a flash of irritation. Micro-expressions happen fast, but they communicate volumes. People may not consciously register them, yet they feel the shift instantly. Most status loss happens in micro-reactions. Someone makes a subtle jab. Your face tightens for half a second. Someone mentions a competitor's success. Your expression flickers. Someone challenges your idea. Your jaw hardens before you speak. That moment reveals impact. High-value presence does not mean emotional numbness. It means emotional containment. When something unexpected happens, pause before your face reacts. Let your features remain neutral, not blank, not cold, neutral. This is especially important in professional settings. Leaders who visibly react to every surprise signal volatility. Colleagues who show every emotional spike signal instability. Over time, instability reduces trust. The Stoics practiced what we might call emotional delay. They trained themselves to insert a gap between stimulus and reaction. You can apply the same principle physically. When someone says something provocative, breathe once before responding. Let your face remain steady. Let your posture stay grounded, then decide how to respond verbally. This delay does three things. First, it protects your authority. You are not seen as easily triggered. Second, it increases perceived confidence. Composure under mild pressure reads as strength. Third, it shifts the psychological balance. The person who attempted to provoke you sees no visible effect. The expected micro-reward disappears. There is also a social dimension. When you overreact facially, big laughs, exaggerated shock, visible irritation, you unintentionally lower perceived control. When your expressions are measured, your emotional energy appears regulated. Regulated energy feels high value. Practice this intentionally. Notice how often your face reacts before your words do. Start reducing the amplitude. Soften exaggerated smiles. Control eye rolls. Eliminate visible annoyance. You are not suppressing emotion. You are choosing when and how to display it. And when your face remains composed under pressure, people sense something rare: emotional discipline. Emotional discipline is attractive. It is respected. And it is powerful. Rule number 4, own physical space without aggression. Most people either shrink or overcompensate. When they feel uncertain, they contract. Shoulders round forward, arms fold tightly, legs cross inward. Their body subtly collapses into itself as if trying to occupy less territory. Others go the opposite direction. They spread excessively. They lean back dramatically. They take up space in a way that feels forced. That reads as insecurity disguised as dominance. High-value presence sits between these extremes. You occupy space naturally. Stand with your shoulders relaxed but open. Keep your spine upright without stiffness. When seated, plant both feet on the ground or cross comfortably without folding inward. Let your arms rest instead of clinging to your body. Space communicates status subconsciously. People who feel entitled to exist do not shrink. They also do not invade unnecessarily. The Stoic foundation here is internal legitimacy. If you feel you must earn your right to be present, your body will contract. If you feel threatened, you may inflate artificially. But if you are internally settled, your body remains balanced. Owning space also means not over-adjusting to others' movements. If someone steps slightly into your area, you do not immediately retreat unless appropriate. If someone gestures widely, you do not physically flinch. You stay centered. There is also a pacing element. When you walk through a doorway, do not squeeze through apologetically unless required. When you sit at a table, do not perch at the edge nervously. Allow yourself to settle fully into the seat. This subtle confidence signals that you belong. Belonging energy reads as high value because it suggests internal certainty. In professional environments, leaders often display this unconsciously. They sit squarely. They lean back calmly. They do not twitch or shrink during disagreement. They appear grounded. Grounded individuals are harder to pressure. and people instinctively respect those who are difficult to physically and emotionally displace. Practice this by scanning your posture throughout the day. Are your shoulders collapsing? Are your arms defensive? Are you minimizing yourself? Open your frame slightly. Relax your breathing. Root your feet. You are not dominating the room. You are stabilizing yourself within it. And stability quietly elevates status. Rule number 5. Strategic stillness. Most people think presence is about movement, expressive gestures, animated delivery, constant nodding, visible engagement. But real authority often shows up in restraint. Stillness creates gravity. When you reduce unnecessary motion, people focus more on you. When your hands are calm instead of constantly adjusting, when your legs are steady instead of bouncing, when your head does not dart around mid-conversation, your presence feels heavier. Heavier does not mean intimidating. It means grounded. Watch high-level executives, experienced negotiators, or individuals who naturally command attention. They do not rush to fill silence with movement. They do not over-gesture to prove conviction. They pause. They remain physically steady while others fidget. Stillness communicates internal control. The Stoics valued deliberate action. They warned against impulsive motion driven by emotion. Strategic stillness is the physical expression of that philosophy. You move when movement serves a purpose. You remain still when it does not. There is psychological power in being the least reactive body in the room. If someone raises their voice slightly and you remain physically composed, contrast forms. If someone gestures wildly while speaking and you remain measured, contrast forms. If a conversation grows tense and your posture does not tighten, contrast forms. Contrast creates authority. Stillness also amplifies your words. When you speak without excessive movement, each sentence feels intentional. When you pause without anxiety, silence feels controlled instead of awkward. Most people fear silence. High-value presence uses it. Practice reducing one unnecessary movement at a time. Stop tapping your foot. Stop checking your phone mid-conversation. Stop nodding excessively to signal agreement. Let your body rest. Then observe how the energy shifts. People will often slow down around you. Their tone adjusts. Their pacing mirrors yours, because nervous systems sync. When yours is stable, others feel it. Strategic stillness is not about freezing. It is about removing noise from your body. And when physical noise disappears, psychological weight increases. That weight is perceived as value. Now let's integrate all 5 rules, because individually they shift perception, but together they transform it. Imagine walking into a professional setting. You reduce your movement speed slightly. No rush, no frantic scanning. You enter with controlled pacing. Your posture is open but relaxed. Shoulders neutral, spine upright. You occupy your space naturally without shrinking or expanding theatrically. When someone greets you, you hold steady eye contact 1 second longer than average. Not aggressive, not forced, just grounded. During conversation, your facial reactions remain measured. A joke lands, you smile, but not exaggeratedly. A criticism appears, your expression stays composed. You breathe before responding. When tension rises, your body remains still. No fidgeting, no visible agitation. Your pauses feel intentional, not anxious. Nothing dramatic happened. But the perception shifts. People begin adjusting to you. They slow their speech slightly. They maintain stronger eye contact back. They treat your pauses as meaningful rather than awkward. They are less likely to interrupt, less likely to push. Why? Because your non-verbal signals communicate internal certainty, and certainty reads as high value. Now, apply this socially. At gatherings, instead of over-smiling to appear likable, you relax your expression. Instead of scanning constantly to see who is watching you, focus fully on the person in front of you. Instead of laughing louder than necessary, you allow natural reactions. You become less performative and, paradoxically, more magnetic. People are drawn to regulated energy. It feels safe. It feels stable. It feels mature. The key is consistency. If you slow your movements but your face still leaks insecurity, the signal breaks. If you hold eye contact but fidget constantly, the signal weakens. If you sit upright but overreact emotionally, the impression fragments. Integration creates coherence, and coherence creates presence. The Stoics would call this alignment between inner discipline and outer behavior. When your mind is not scrambling, your body does not scramble. When your self-worth is not fragile, your posture does not collapse. Presence is not added. It is revealed when instability is removed. And once instability is removed consistently, people respond differently without knowing exactly why. They just feel it. Here is the deeper truth. High-value presence is not created by tricks. It is revealed through control. You slowed your movements. You held eye contact. You regulated your facial reactions. You owned your space. You practiced strategic stillness. None of these require talent. None require extroversion. None require dominance. They require awareness and discipline. Most people try to raise status through volume, humor, charisma, or constant talking. But status built on performance fluctuates. It rises and falls depending on audience reaction. Status built on stability does not fluctuate. The Stoics did not seek admiration. They sought self-mastery. And self-mastery naturally altered how others perceived them. When you are not easily rattled, not easily rushed, not easily provoked, you create psychological gravity. Gravity pulls attention without demanding it. Stillness feels powerful because it contrasts with chaos. Calm feels high value because it contrasts with nervous energy. Deliberate movement feels confident because it contrasts with haste. You do not need to convince people you matter. Your body can communicate it, but only if your internal state supports it. This is the final shift. Stop trying to look high value. Start removing behaviors that leak insecurity. Remove urgency. Remove fidgeting. Remove exaggerated reactions. Remove spatial collapse. Remove restless motion. What remains is presence, and presence commands respect quietly. If this resonated, write this in the comments. Stability is my signal. Because in every room you enter, before you speak, before you act, before you prove anything, your body speaks first. Make sure it speaks calm authority. And calm authority always outlasts noise.